CBS was not as mad about the show as we wanted them to be, and we were on a time slot. We were on a Tuesday night at 7:30 after a show called To Rome with Love, and before Hee Haw. There was half-hour Hee Haw, and we were in the middle of those two shows, which were completely incompatible with what we were doing. We were also opposite. They cannily scheduled us opposite the Mod Squad, which was the biggest show on television at that time. So we were going to get killed. And there was also an hour show with Don Knotts, who was just coming off of the Andy Griffith show, and that was supposed to be a hot show. So they had sandwiched us in between these two, the NBC show and the ABC show, which were going to kill us. And they were going to get what they wanted, which was we'd be canceled. And apparently there was a disagreement, not over this show, but over the way the network was being run in general, between Mike Dan, who had been there forever, and Bob Wood, who had just come in. And Bob Wood turned out to be a really tough guy who said, I think the kind of shows we have on CBS, while they're getting high numbers, are the wrong kind of numbers. Demographics are not good. I've been looking at this. As an ex-advertising guy, I know that even though these shows are getting pretty good numbers right now, they have a short shelf life and they're going to go.
What type of shows are we talking about?
We're talking about Beverly Hillbillies, Green Acres, Hee Haw, those kinds of shows. Petticoat Junction. Those shows that were aimed at a real rural, almost southern rural kind of audience, which an older audience. And he said, I want a young, hip, urban audience. And he said, I'm gonna start canceling these shows. And Mike Dan apparently said, not while I'm around. And I guess Bob said, well, I suppose that could be arranged. And Mike Dan quit. And Bob brought in a new guy named Fred Silverman, very young, 29 or 30 years old, from daytime. And Freddie had ideas like Bob's, that they wanted to make it young, urban. Ethel tells me about a story where Freddie was viewing all the pilots, and he came down and they went to view the Mary show. And after the show was over, everybody had been privy to all the other stuff. I mean, every executive in there knew how much Dan had hated it and all this kind of stuff. So they're watching it with Fred, and the pilot ends. Fred picks up the phone and says, get me Bob Wood in New York. And Ethel says, oh, what's he going to say, you know? And he gets Bob, and he says, Bob, I found the show we're looking for. This is the kind of show we've been talking about. And it's the Mary Tyler Moore Show. And if we don't get it away from the time slot it's in, it's going to get killed, and we got to move it. And this was in, I don't know, June? All the advertising had been set, the schedule had been set for some time, and they shook up the schedule to move us from that time slot where we were going to get killed on Tuesday night to Saturday night at 9:30 with no real opposition against us, with a show called Arnie in front of us that was a pretty good show. It was coming on just about with Herschel Bernardi, who was coming on right after us. Carol Burnett on the other end put us in this sort of hammock and saved the show. Saved the show. And I've never heard of that being done once the schedule is locked with the advertisers and everything for anybody to go and do what he did. But that was a real nervy proposition on both their parts, on Fred's and Bob, and we owed them a great deal, because we could have been on the air 6 weeks and gone.
And really the beginnings of building one of the most legendary nights of programming in the history of television.
Well, yeah. I mean, not that year, but the year after. All in the Family. MASH was on Saturday night. Mary. Newhart.
Carol Burnett.
I mean, doesn't get a lot better than that.